In the previous chapters, we've talked a lot about capital. Now, Smith takes a look at the 4 different ways capital can be used. Number 1. Capital can yield raw produce for immediate consumption or for processing. That's the case with farms or fisheries. Number 2. Capital can be used to prepare raw materials for consumption. That is the case with machineries, for example. Number 3. Capital can be used to transport raw or manufactured products to the market. That is the case with ships and cars. And number 4. Capital can be used in retailing to divide raw or manufactured goods into smaller amounts that match the needs of consumers. If there were no butchers, for example, people would have to purchase a whole cow or a whole sheep at a time, which would be really inconvenient for people that could afford it and impossible for people who can't afford it. All of those 4 uses of capital are essential, and none can exist without the other 3. Capital has to be used to get raw produce, so that capital can then be used to work on and trade that raw produce. Capital has to be used to work on raw materials, because the manufactured product is what I wanted in the first place, and unless I can have that, I'm not gonna mine those raw materials in the first place. There's very little use to having a bunch of rare earths or iron ore lying around in your room. You can make a lot more of those connections just with common sense. Smith is now taking on a view that was very common in his time, that retailers contribute nothing and that they require regulation because competition is too harsh and hurting the economy, causing them to fail, and that there's to push customers into buying what they didn't need. He in fact says that competition can be very good, lowering prices and improving service. This is one of those times that Smith is pointing out something that's seemingly very obvious today, but we have to keep in mind that this was not a mainstream idea at the time, and Smith was really going against the grain here. To the point of retailers pushing people to buy what they don't need, Smith says, "It is not the multitude of alehouses that occasions a general disposition of drunkenness among the common people, but that disposition arising from other causes necessarily gives employment to a multitude of alehouses." People who are employed in any of those 4 ways, including retailers, are all productive laborers, since their labor results in commodities being provided to customers. Smith now says that capital employed in agriculture is the most productive. In agriculture, human labor isn't the only factor. Additionally, nature works alongside the farmer, which leads to the farmer being more productive. This is something that, while true in Smith's time, isn't really true anymore. Technology has made it possible to be quite productive with very little capital in other areas as well. Anyways, employing capital in agriculture back in Smith's time was therefore the most beneficial to society. He thinks that this is what led to the success of the American colonies. Their capital was at the time focused on the highly productive sector of agriculture. America wasn't really producing a lot of manufactured goods, and there weren't a lot of American merchants. Traded goods and manufactured goods were imported from other countries, which means they didn't have to invest any capital in creating those less profitable things. So how productive capital is and how much its use benefits society depends on which sector you invested in, either agriculture, manufacturing, or wholesale. If a country is so productive that it produces more than it can consume, it has to export that surplus and trade it for something that is in demand in the home country. If it doesn't export its surplus, it has to cease some production, thereby losing national product. Countries are therefore better off if they don't try to remain self-sufficient and protect their own industries, but rather if they embrace the opportunities of international trade.